It all started with a folder on my computer. I'm not sure why I did it at first. Maybe it was the nagging feeling in the pit of my stomach, or the way my wife, Kate, had been acting recently. Something had felt off for a while, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I wasn't the kind of guy who would immediately accuse his partner of cheating. I wasn't someone who let paranoia get the best of me. But when I started noticing certain things, a shift in her behavior, the way she was always on her phone, the late nights out, I couldn't ignore the suspicion any longer. One evening, after Kate had left for a quick grocery run, I decided to start looking. I wasn't frantic, but I needed some clarity. If there was anything to be found, I was going to find it calmly. I opened up my computer and created a folder. I named it something innocuous, Project Ideas, so Kate wouldn't think anything of it if she ever happened to see it. Then, I began collecting what I could. There were photos of her with another man in a coffee shop, laughing, touching her hair in that intimate way people do when they feel more than friendly. There were videos, snippets of text messages I had caught on the lock screen of her phone, messages that were a little too flirtatious, a little too personal. There were receipts, transactions for a boutique hotel she had stayed at in another city with a man I didn't know. Everything was there, right in front of me. I didn't react the way I thought I would. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel a rush of anger. I felt numb. My heart wasn't racing. I wasn't on edge. I was calm, far too calm. But it was the kind of calm that felt detached, like I was looking at someone else's life. There was no doubt in my mind that she had been cheating, but there was no rush to confront her yet. I needed more. I needed more proof, and I needed to understand why. So, I added everything to that folder. Texts, photos, videos, receipts. Anything I could find, I collected. Only I had access to it. Only I knew what I was doing. Kate didn't know. And I wasn't in a rush to make any decisions. Not yet. Over the next couple of weeks, I kept adding to the folder. I wasn't being reckless, but I was being thorough. As I went through the things I had found, I realized that the affair wasn't a one-time mistake. Kate had been seeing multiple men over the past few months, 2 men, to be exact. I don't know why that fact struck me harder than the photos or the receipts. Maybe it was the realization that this wasn't just a lapse in judgment. It was a pattern, a deliberate choice she had made. The first man was James. I found receipts for expensive dinners they had shared, a receipt for a hotel room they'd rented for a weekend getaway. The texts between them were passionate, and the things she said to him were the kind of things she had never said to me, words of adoration, words of affection. Things that made my stomach churn. The second man was Alex. I found a set of photos on her phone, taken during a trip she said was a work event. She'd been at a beach with him, holding hands, walking along the shore at sunset. There was something about the way they looked at each other that told me it wasn't just a fling. I knew Kate, and I knew she wouldn't get so close to someone unless there was something more. But there was something else that stood out in all this evidence. The men, both James and Alex, had given her gifts. But the way Kate reacted to those gifts was strange. She never cared for the usual presents, flowers, jewelry, thoughtful things. No, she always seemed uninterested in those. But when James offered her money, cash, to be exact, she eagerly accepted. That was her currency. The men in her life had learned that, I suppose. They knew what she truly valued. That realization hit me like a brick. She wasn't just cheating because of lack of attention. She was using these men for something deeper, something more transactional. It wasn't about love. It was about what she could get. But I wasn't angry yet. Not at her, not at them. I just felt like I was learning about someone I had thought I knew. I had been with Kate for 6 years. We had built a life together. I had done everything I could for her. I supported her dreams, helped her with everything, worked tirelessly to give her the life she wanted. And now I was faced with the ugly reality that none of it mattered. I wasn't sure what to do with this knowledge. Confront her? Yes, but not yet. I wanted to understand more. I wanted to know why. Why had she chosen this path? Why had she done this to us? My hobby had always been solving puzzles. It was a passion of mine, something I did to unwind. Whether it was jigsaw puzzles or coding my own websites, I enjoyed the feeling of figuring something out, of solving a mystery. I decided to start with the basics. I began keeping track of her schedule. It wasn't hard to do. We worked together at the same office, and I could see when she was at work, when she had meetings, when she left early. But she had been pulling away from me in subtle ways, which meant she had to be covering her tracks. I knew she would lie to my face if I asked her directly. I had to be smarter than that. One weekend, when she was out with friends, I took a deeper dive into her personal life. I found that Kate had been working on a few side projects. It seemed innocent enough, an online business idea, some creative projects. But there was one thing I hadn't noticed before: she'd been secretly using money from the men she was seeing to fund these projects. Everything I had seen, the photos, the texts, the receipts, had pointed to one conclusion: Kate had been using these men to fund her personal ambitions. She wasn't just unfaithful. She was using the affairs to build a life for herself outside of our marriage, a life where she was financially independent of me. I had worked hard to build a life together, but she had worked harder to tear it apart. As I sat in front of my computer, looking at the folder of evidence, I felt something shift inside me. I wasn't upset. I wasn't angry. I was numb. I had the facts. I had the truth. But I didn't know what to do with it yet. I wasn't in a hurry to make a decision. I wasn't ready to confront Kate just yet. I needed to think things through, to understand the full extent of what I was dealing with. All I knew was that my marriage had become something I didn't recognize anymore. And soon, I was going to have to decide whether I could ever trust her again. Or if I even wanted to. After a few days of sitting with the evidence I had collected, I realized that I couldn't simply let this go without truly understanding the full extent of what was going on. I had to know how far Kate was willing to go. It wasn't just about the affair anymore. It was about understanding the why, the depths of her betrayal, and how much she had been hiding from me. I wasn't ready to confront her directly just yet. I wanted to be smarter about this, to observe more and see just how deep this could go. So, I kept collecting. I didn't change my behavior around Kate, but I was now more observant than ever. The small things I had missed before, like how her phone was always on silent, how she would leave the room when certain topics came up, how she started to spend more time out with friends than she used to, started to make sense. But now, I wanted more than just simple photos and receipts. I wanted to understand the psychology behind it all. How many men had she been involved with? How many secrets had she kept? I had a weird thought that, if I was going to process this whole thing, I needed an outlet. I wasn't the type of person to scream and shout or cause a scene. No, I was someone who dealt with things quietly, methodically. I had always loved working on puzzles, and I saw this as the ultimate puzzle to solve. But as I looked through the photos, read the messages, and thought about how my life had been shattered, I realized that maybe there were others out there who had gone through something similar. I could turn this situation into something that could help me, and others. Maybe it could be therapeutic. So, I decided to create a website. At first, it was just a way for me to express my thoughts. A place to document what I had found, a place to lay it all out so I could make sense of it. But as I began to write, the idea grew. The website became something else, a platform for others who had been through betrayal, a way to share stories and gather advice. It wasn't just about Kate's affair anymore, it was about the broader topic of infidelity. I called it, Betrayed, but Not Broken. The tagline read, "I found out my wife was cheating, but I don't know how far this goes. How many others are out there?" The idea was simple: I'd share my own story, but I'd also leave it open for others to comment, share their experiences, and offer support or advice. I created sections for stories, anonymous confessions, and articles on how to deal with infidelity, everything I was learning from my own situation, and everything others were sharing with me. It wasn't long before the website started to gain traction. I hadn't expected it to get so much attention. But every day, more and more comments appeared, and more people reached out to share their own stories of betrayal. It was like I had opened a floodgate to something far larger than I had ever imagined. People were talking about affairs, deceit, manipulation, things I hadn't even considered. There were people from all over the world, some offering support, others asking for advice. It was becoming its own community, a space for people who had been wronged to find solidarity in each other. As the site gained popularity, so did the number of posts and messages. Some were short and to the point, others were long, heartbreaking confessions. One particular post stuck with me. "I've been married for 10 years. I found out last month that my husband has been seeing someone else. It's devastating. I don't know what to do next. I'm still in love with him, but how do I get over this?" Another comment that seemed to resonate with so many others read, "My wife's affair was not just physical. It was emotional. She told me everything was fine, but she was secretly meeting him behind my back. How do I trust again?" Reading these posts felt like I wasn't alone in this. I wasn't the only one dealing with the gut-wrenching reality of betrayal. And the more I read, the more I started to realize that Kate's affair was just one example in a sea of broken marriages. But as I read through the posts, one thing became clear: there were common themes. People who had been cheated on often felt trapped in a cycle of disbelief, hurt, and confusion. Many asked the same questions: how do you rebuild trust? How do you confront the person you love when they've broken your heart? I continued adding to the website, making it a place where I could gather more evidence of Kate's behavior and share my findings. I tracked her every move, her phone calls, her meetings with friends, her trips out of town that I later discovered weren't business-related at all. I had learned that she was always careful to cover her tracks, but I had gotten smarter. I'd even figured out ways to track her spending, seeing that she'd been going to hotels, buying expensive gifts for herself with money I hadn't seen before. She was keeping secrets in plain sight, thinking I wouldn't connect the dots. And every new detail, every new piece of evidence, just added fuel to the fire. It was becoming clear that I wasn't dealing with one affair. I was dealing with a pattern of deceit, a lifestyle that she had carefully crafted behind my back. The website, Betrayed, but Not Broken, was turning into a valuable resource for me. I could read the stories of others, offer my own advice in return, and vent my frustration without the immediate need to confront Kate. I had become a quiet observer, gathering evidence in my own time, and seeing how others navigated their own situations. But the more I read, the more I realized I had to make a decision. I couldn't let this go on forever. The evidence was piling up, and my emotional state was growing more frazzled with every new thing I found. Kate was hiding things, and I wasn't sure if I would ever be able to look at her the same way again. And yet, as I stared at the computer screen one night, reading more comments from people who shared their stories of betrayal, I started to feel something inside me shift. I wasn't just reacting to Kate's betrayal anymore. I was starting to think about what I wanted, about how I wanted to move forward with my life, whether she was part of it or not. The website wasn't just a way to collect evidence anymore, it was my safe space, a place where I could figure out what I needed to do. I still hadn't confronted Kate. But every day, as the website grew and I connected with people who had gone through the same thing, I started to feel a little less alone. A little less uncertain about the future. And one thought kept running through my mind as I read through the latest comments on the website: I had been betrayed, but I wasn't broken. Not yet. The website had become more than just a project, it had become a tool, a way to organize the chaos in my life. Every day, I added new content, new posts, evidence, and stories from other people. It gave me a sense of control, of understanding, something that had been missing ever since I found out about Kate's affair. I wasn't just a passive observer anymore, I was an active participant in unraveling the truth. But Kate, as skilled as she was at lying and hiding things, had begun to make a mistake. A crucial one. It started innocently enough. She had been spending more time on her phone recently, and when I happened to glance over her shoulder one evening, I saw an email from a company I didn't recognize. The subject line was oddly familiar: confirmation of payment for your stay at the Hilton, reservation number 125467. It wasn't the first time I had seen hotel receipts in her emails, but this one struck me. It had the name James on it, the man who had been one of her lovers. I thought back to the earlier receipts I had found, where she had made the same reservation at the same hotel, but she had claimed that it was for a work trip. This time, she had forgotten to delete the email. It wasn't like her to be careless, and yet there it was, sitting right in front of me. But it didn't just stop at the hotel. She had also received a confirmation email for a luxury restaurant, another location where I knew she'd been meeting James. I felt a rush of clarity. This wasn't just a mistake, this was the opening I needed. I pulled up the file I had been building on my computer, reviewed everything, and smiled to myself. Kate had been careful, yes. But she had grown complacent. Her system of deception was starting to crumble under the weight of her own lies. Later that night, after she had gone to bed, I did something that felt almost liberating. I logged onto the website I had created, betrayed, but not broken, and began drafting a new post. I wasn't going to keep this to myself any longer. I had gathered enough evidence to expose her, and now, I was going to turn the tables. I wasn't going to let Kate hide behind her lies. I wrote the post with calm precision, adding all the pieces of evidence I had collected over the past weeks. I included screenshots of the receipts, the hotel booking confirmations, and the text messages I had found between Kate and James. And then, at the end of the post, I added a link. A link to a new page on the website. A page dedicated to public exposure. I titled it, How to Expose Infidelity, One Man's Story of Betrayal. Then, I shared the link with all of my friends. I reached out to people who had been close to both Kate and me, friends from college, work colleagues, family members, and I sent them the link. I wanted everyone to see the truth. I wanted everyone to understand exactly who Kate was and what she had done. It wasn't just a private matter anymore. I had spent weeks piecing together the story, and now, it was time for the world to know. I felt no guilt as I hit send. The next day, I watched as the responses to the post started flooding in. The comments on the site exploded, as friends and acquaintances reacted to the post. Some of them were shocked, some were angry, and some were just plain disappointed. But the real shock came when Kate started receiving messages from people she had known. People who were supposed to be her friends, people she had worked with, people she had smiled at and laughed with, people who had no idea about her affairs. People who were suddenly waking up to the fact that the woman they knew had been living a lie. Kate didn't know it yet, but the damage was already done. The notifications from the website were relentless. She saw the posts, saw the comments, saw how the truth was now out in the open. Her phone rang non-stop. At first, she thought it was some sort of misunderstanding. Maybe someone was playing a prank, maybe it was a mistake. But as the hours passed and more people reached out, she started to panic. I could see her spiraling. The guilt and shame were written all over her face. But it wasn't just the guilt. It was the shock of having her carefully constructed world come crashing down in front of her. The truth had been exposed, and there was no way to take it back. By the time I got home that evening, I knew things had already escalated. I had planned to confront her, but when I walked through the door, I found Kate sitting on the couch, trembling. Her face was pale, her eyes bloodshot. She had seen the website. She had seen everything. "Mike," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Why are you doing this?" I stood there, looking at her, taking in the woman I had once loved and trusted. She was now nothing more than a liar. "I'm not doing anything, Kate," I said, my voice steady, "I'm just letting the truth speak for itself." She tried to explain, but her words were jumbled. It was a mistake. I was confused. I never meant for this to happen. "Mike, please, don't do this." "Don't do this?" I repeated, my voice calm, but with an edge to it. "You already did this, Kate. You made your choices. You lied, you betrayed me, and now the world knows. I'm done pretending I didn't see it." I wasn't angry. At least, not in the way I thought I would be. This wasn't about revenge, it was about justice, and about exposing the truth. The public humiliation was a consequence of her own actions. I didn't need to make excuses for what I was doing. I wasn't punishing her out of spite. I was letting the world know exactly what kind of person she was. In the following days, the fallout was as intense as I expected. Friends who had been close to us reached out to apologize for not seeing the signs. Family members expressed their shock and disappointment. Some even offered their sympathy, but most people simply saw Kate for who she really was. I didn't have to lift a finger after that. Kate's reputation was ruined. People she had once trusted turned their backs on her. She couldn't escape the truth anymore. She couldn't hide from the life she had tried to keep in the shadows. As for me, I felt a strange peace. Not because I had exposed her, but because I had taken control of the situation. I had gone through the pain, the hurt, the confusion, and in the end, I had come out on top. I wasn't broken. I wasn't destroyed. I had taken the steps to rebuild my life, to reclaim my dignity, and to walk away from a relationship that no longer served me. In the end, I didn't just uncover the betrayal. I had become a master of my own fate, and the web of lies had been unraveled in the most public way possible. The fallout from everything that happened was like a storm that had passed through my life, leaving destruction in its wake. But unlike most storms, this one didn't leave me broken. Instead, I felt free. A weight I didn't even realize I had been carrying had been lifted, and it felt strange to walk through the world with a sense of calm that I hadn't felt in months. Kate's betrayal, the public exposure, all of it, it had brought me to this point where I could finally start fresh. I had taken control, and now I needed to decide what came next. The first step was obvious. I filed for divorce. It was a no-brainer, honestly. There was no going back to a marriage built on lies. I needed to move forward, and the only way I could do that was by ending things with Kate once and for all. It wasn't just about getting away from her, it was about reclaiming my life, my peace, and my future. Kate didn't contest the divorce. The legal proceedings were straightforward. She didn't even fight for joint custody of the dog we had shared, which was just another sign that she had moved on. The moment the papers were signed, it felt like the final chapter of my life with her was officially closed. I was free. But the hardest part came after. I needed a fresh start. I couldn't stay in the same city. Everywhere I went, there were reminders of what had happened, places we used to go, people who knew us as a couple, the lingering tension of those months when I was still living in the shadow of her lies. So, I decided to move. I didn't make it a dramatic decision. It wasn't some act of vengeance. I wasn't running away from my problems, but I knew I needed distance. A new city, a new life, at least for the next year, would help me reset. I found a small apartment in a city a few hours away. The place was modest, but it was mine. And it felt like the first step towards something better. The first few weeks were strange. The silence in the apartment was deafening at times, and I spent a lot of evenings just sitting in front of my computer, reading through the comments on Betrayed, but not broken. The website had continued to grow, and it was a comfort to know that I wasn't the only one struggling through heartbreak. Every post, every comment, every story of betrayal and recovery brought me a sense of connection, of solidarity. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about the community I had unknowingly created, people who had been wronged, who had faced the worst, and were now fighting to rebuild their lives. But even with the support of that online community, I couldn't shake the feeling of loneliness. I had left my old life behind, but I hadn't yet built the new one. I knew I needed a new focus, something to put my energy into. I couldn't sit still forever. One night, after an exhausting day of unpacking and adjusting to my new life, I checked my inbox on the website. There was a message from a user named Ryan, someone who had been commenting frequently on my posts. His name was familiar, but I hadn't paid much attention to the details. I opened the message. "Hi Mike. I've been following your journey for the past few months, and I wanted to reach out to you. I know what you've been through, and I admire the strength it took to share your story with the world. I've been running a small consultancy for the past few years, focused on helping people deal with infidelity, healing, and relationship recovery. I've also been working with people who've been through similar experiences, helping them rebuild their lives. I've seen the community you've built on Betrayed, but not broken, and I think there's an opportunity for collaboration. I'd love to talk with you more about possibly working together, about creating resources, offering advice, and even turning your website into something larger. There's a lot of potential here, and I think your story and platform could help a lot of people. Let me know if you're interested. I'd be happy to chat more. Best, Ryan." I read the message twice, then leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen. For a moment, I didn't know how to respond. Part of me was cautious. I had been burned by trust before, and this felt like another opportunity to open myself up to someone I didn't know. But there was also a part of me that saw this as an opportunity, a chance to turn my pain into something positive, to help others on a larger scale, to take this platform to new heights. I knew this was more than just a casual offer. Ryan had a vision. He saw potential in what I had built, and more importantly, he was offering a way to turn it into something that could make a real difference. The next day, I responded. "Hi Ryan. Thank you for reaching out. I appreciate your kind words and your insight. You're right, I've built something I'm proud of, but I'm still figuring out what the next step looks like. The idea of collaborating sounds interesting. I'd love to hear more about what you have in mind and how we could work together. Let's set up a time to chat. Best, Mike." We set up a call for the following week. When we finally spoke, Ryan explained his vision in more detail. His company specialized in online platforms designed to help people through difficult emotional situations, particularly infidelity. He wanted to collaborate on expanding Betrayed, but not broken into a larger resource, offering expert advice, one-on-one consultations, and even creating a forum where people could connect and heal. As I listened to him talk, I realized this was exactly what I had been craving: purpose, direction, a way to take my personal pain and transform it into something that could help others. The more I thought about it, the more excited I became about the possibilities. By the end of the call, I agreed to partner with Ryan. We made plans to work together, and I began to see how this new venture could help so many people, and in turn, help me heal as well. The months that followed were a whirlwind. The website's reach grew significantly, and with Ryan's expertise, we turned it into a comprehensive platform for those suffering from the pain of betrayal. We created articles, videos, and support groups. We brought in therapists, coaches, and speakers who specialized in emotional recovery. The platform became a safe space for people to share their stories, find solace, and rebuild their lives. As for me, I finally started to feel like I was moving forward. My life in the new city became a fresh start, a chance to build something for myself and, in a way, give back to those who had supported me along the way. I still thought about Kate sometimes, but the anger had faded. The pain had softened. And I realized that the true power wasn't in punishing her anymore, it was in healing, and in helping others heal, too. It was a long road ahead, but I had found a new purpose. A purpose that, for the first time in a long while, felt like it was truly mine.